Okay, so welcome everyone to the third seminar for this academic year, organized by the Critical South Asia Group at the University of Warwick. Before we begin, there are some thanks to do. I would like to thank the Warwick Interdisciplinary Center for International Development, or WICID as we call it, for their support, and especially to Maeve Moynihan for her technical wizardry. Um, Critical South Asia also has a Facebook page, so please do follow us there to receive information about our upcoming talks and events. We will be posting a recording of today's seminar there as well on the WICID YouTube channel. I would like to dedicate today's seminar to two very dear and exemplary scholars of and in South Asia who passed away this week. Professor Sunil Kumar taught medieval Indian history at the University of Delhi and was the foremost scholar of the Sultanate and in particular of Delhi's many pasts. He was a much beloved mentor, colleague, and teacher to many, many people, as evidenced in the moving tributes that have been pouring in from across the world. And just last night, we heard of the passing of Professor Malathi Dialvis, an extraordinary anthropologist of memory and trauma in Sri Lanka, a fierce feminist who believed in global solidarity and was a key part of international networks studying women in conflict zones, and a beloved colleague and teacher. Last summer, we were fortunate to have her as a part of our panel on COVID-19 and South Asia Citizenship Matters, where she spoke powerfully about the rising wave of prejudice against Muslims in Sri Lanka under the cover of the pandemic. Both of these untimely deaths leave a massive hole in our lives as scholars and colleagues, but they also inspire us to carry their innovative and bold work forward. And so it is fitting that we have this very special seminar today with two guest speakers, Ari Gautier and Ananya Jahanara Kabir. Ari is a novelist who grew up in Pondicherry, India. His works embody the Creole culture of the place where he grew up, presenting concurrent and palimpsestic histories and cultures and tongues, interweaving French, Tamil, English, Hindi, Creole, and I don't know what other languages you speak and understand. Jazz, as we were saying before we started. Ananya is professor of English at King's College London, initially trained as a scholar of medieval English literature. Is that right, Ananya?
Very right. That's absolutely.
She has authored influential books on the partition of South Asia and Kashmir. She has won numerous prizes for her work, too numerous to be listed now, and is currently at work on a book called Allegro Poetics on dance as resistance. Most recently, she has been involved in a Jugal Bandi with Ari via their online platform called Le Thinnai Creole. Without further ado, I would like to invite them to tell us all about it. As Ananya put it in this morning's Facebook post, we are keen to share with you our vision and praxis for another South Asia, archipelagic, creolized, and allegro political. So welcome, Ari and Ananya.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rashmi. Thanks a lot. Un soir d'août 1854, deux ombres furtives déambulaient dans les rues de Pondichéry, sans but précis. Un homme et une femme âgés d'une vingtaine d'années marchaient d'un pas hésitant. Leurs regards craintifs fouillaient les alentours de façon désespérée. L'homme tenait un bâton à la main droite. La femme se démenait avec le pont de son sari qu'elle a essayé de garder sur la tête en guise de voile. Son bras droit lui faisait mal à force de retenir le lourd baluchon qui glissait de sa hanche. Leurs pas incertains s'arrêtèrent lorsqu'ils aperçurent un temple. La femme fit signe à l'homme de s'arrêter. Pandyan, arrêtons-nous un moment. Je ne peux plus avancer. Je suis trop fatigué. Est-ce que tu sais où nous allons au moins? La femme posa son baluchon sur le trottoir sans attendre la réponse. Je ne sais pas plus que toi, Telaga. Comme toi, c'est la première fois que je viens dans cette ville. Et alors, pourquoi sommes-nous ici? Demanda la femme. Sa voix trahissait une certaine irritation. L'homme la remarqua. Assieds-toi sur le baluchon, repose-toi un peu. Je vais aller faire un tour vers le temple pour voir si on peut trouver un endroit pour dormir ce soir. Disant cela, l'homme invita la femme à s'asseoir. La femme qui était sur le point de se relever se releva immédiatement. Ah non, je ne resterai pas toute seule sur ce bout de trottoir, protesta-t-elle.
On an August night in 1854, a man and a woman wandered the streets of Pondicherry. As they walked, the young couple looked around them in hesitation and fear. The man had a walking stick in his right hand. The woman held a fold of a sari over her head. Her other arm was carrying a heavy sack. She was sore beneath its weight and it began to droop against her side. Their uncertain steps slowed as they approached a temple. The woman gestured to the man. Pandyan, let's stop for a moment. I can't go on. I'm so tired. And do you even know where we are going? She put the sack down without waiting for an answer. No more than you do, Tilaka. It's my first time here, too. Sit down on the bundle here, rest a little. I'll go look around this temple and see if there's a place to sleep tonight. The woman who had just been about to sit down stood back up in protest. Oh no, I'm not staying on the sidewalk all by myself.
L'homme la prit affectueusement par les épaules et dit « Ma chère Tilaga, je sais que tu es en train de vivre une période difficile. Tu n'es pas toute seule. C'est difficile pour moi aussi. À deux, nous avons pris cette décision de fuir notre village. Il faut que tu sois forte. Nous devons être forts. Il faut que tu me fasses confiance, ma chérie. Si tu ne te laisses pas abattre, je n'aurai pas la force de continuer tout seul. Sois raisonnable, Tilaga. Attends-moi juste là, je reviens tout de suite. J'en ai pas pour longtemps. » Il laissa la femme perplexe et se dirigea vers le temple. À peine avait-il fait quelques mètres qu'un homme s'avança vers lui et l'interpella. Ce dernier, assis sur le trottoir en face, les observait depuis quelques instants. Les deux hommes discutèrent pendant un moment qui parut interminable à Telaga. Pandyan revint en exultant. « Telaga, je crois que la chance nous sourit à travers ce brave homme. Non seulement il peut nous trouver un endroit pour dormir, mais il vient en plus de nous proposer un travail à tous les deux. » Caché sous son voile, Telaga jeta un regard méfiant vers l'homme qui marchait du bétel. Pandyan était en euphorie. Il ne prêta aucune attention au coup d'œil douteux de sa compagne. Le bon Dieu nous a écoutés, Telaga. Du fait qu'on soit à côté du temple, prenons-le comme un signe. Le monsieur nous propose un travail à l'étranger, aux 2 ou 3 jours de bateau. Tout est en règle. Le contrat, le salaire, le voyage. Tout est pris en charge. Et en plus, nous allons travailler pour des Valacarins, sur une île. C'est une chance, Telaga. C'est la bonne fortune qui nous sourit. C'est Dieu qui nous guide et nous montre cette voie, dit Pandyan en souriant. Mais que ferions-nous là-bas, Pandyan? Quel genre de travail est-ce? Et pourquoi quitterions-nous notre pays? Reprit la femme sceptique. Pandyan prit le bras de l'homme qui se tenait à l'écart et lui dit en riant. Mais dites-lui, monsieur, dites-lui vous-même. Ma femme ne veut pas me croire.
The man took her tenderly in his arms. Tilaka, dear, this is hard for me too. You have to be strong. You have to trust me. Be reasonable. Just wait for me here and I will be right back. It won't be long. He left his wife waiting and headed towards the temple. But he had hardly gone more than a few meters when a man greeted him. This man had been watching the couple from across the street. He and Pandyan spoke for a moment that seemed very long to Tilaka. At last, Pandyan returned, exultant. Tilaka, I think fortune is smiling on us now. Not only can this gentleman give us a place to sleep, but jobs too for both of us. Hidden beneath her makeshift veil, Tilaka looked skeptically at the man who was chewing betel. Pandyan, euphoric, didn't notice her expression. Our prayers have been answered. We met him by the temple. It's a sign. This gentleman is offering us jobs overseas, a few days by ship from here. Everything is on the level contract, salary, voyage. They take care of everything. We'll work for the Velakarans on an island. This is our chance, Tilaka. Good fortune. God guides our way. What will we do there? What kind of work is it? And why do we have to leave this country? Pandian took her by the arm to the man who had been standing off by the side. He said laughingly, Mister, tell her yourself. My wife won't believe me.
L'homme se tourna vers le mur et envoya un jet de jus de bétel. Il essuya sa bouche avec le tundu qu'il portait sur l'épaule gauche. Son rire rougit au bétel avec quelque chose de néfaste. Vous n'avez rien à craindre, chère dame. C'est un travail très facile. Ça consiste à faire sécher du sucre dans les plantations de canne à sucre. Ce n'est que pour une courte durée, 2 ou 3 ans ou plus. Vous serez logé, nourri et payé. Vous pouvez gagner beaucoup d'argent et devenir riche. C'est une chance à ne pas laisser passer, chère dame. À votre place, je n'hésiterai même pas une seconde. La femme le regarda longuement, son regard fouillé dans les tréfonds de l'homme. Une certaine fausseté se dégageait de l'étranger qu'elle a tourmenté. L'homme se sentit gêné et regarda ailleurs. Pandien, qui avait senti le malaise, l'a pris à part. Qu'est-ce qui te prend, Tilaga? Cet homme ne veut que du bien. Pourquoi hésites-tu? Regarde, à peine sommes-nous arrivés dans cette ville que la chance nous sourit. Que crains-tu? Je suis là pour te protéger. Pardon. Rien ne nous arrivera. Fais-moi confiance, ma chérie. De toute façon, nous ne pouvons pas rester ici trop longtemps. Imagine que les hommes de ton père nous retrouvent. C'est ce qu'ils ne vont pas tarder à faire. Il faut faire au plus vite. Partons. Quittons cet endroit le plus tôt possible.
The man spit beetle juice against the wall. He wiped his mouth with the tundu that he carried on his left shoulder. His reddened smile struck Tilaka as an indefinite expression of evil. Dear lady, you have nothing to fear. It's easy work. You take sugar from the sugarcane plantations and you dry it. It's not a very long contract, just 2 or 3 years. You'll be housed, fed, and paid. You can make a lot of money. You can get rich. It's not an opportunity to pass by, dear lady. If I were you, I wouldn't wait even a second. The woman stared at him for a long time. The man felt uncomfortable and avoided her gaze. Pandian spoke. What's bothering you, Tilaka? Why are you hesitating? Look, we only just got into town and already something good has happened to us. What are you afraid of? Nothing's going to happen. Trust me, darling. Anyway, we can't stay here long. Imagine if your father's family catches up with us, and they will sooner or later. Let's leave now while we can. So, everybody listening to us, this was an episode from Ari's novel, his second novel, Le Thinnai. And we tried to do something different from always just reading and showing stuff on PowerPoint. We just did it orally. Hopefully, those of you who can't understand the French got the English translations. The book is being published, actually. The English translation is about to see the light of day next month. So there's a little advanced shout out for it. It's published by Hachette India. But anyway, Ari, I think I would like us to start by asking you, tell us, why did you include this episode within the Thinnai? Because, as Rashmi also said, your work's about Pondicherry, your novels have been about Pondicherry. The Thinnai is about people, different kinds of people coming into Pondicherry and hanging out, finding each other on this thinnai, this veranda-like structure of a home where they exchange stories and histories unfold. So in the middle of all these currents which bring people to Pondicherry, why did we choose to have an episode where people, this couple, Pandian and Tilaka, are seen as departing from Pondicherry?
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's very simple because the narration of Le Thinnai, I don't want to just to talk about just Pondicherry, because you know Pondicherry, the place has so much of outreach in all over the world because of the French colonization. But more than this, I wanted to give an idea of the kind of oppressive society we were living in that days and even now. So Pandian is a Kottarime, as we say in Tamil, is a slave working for a Brahmin zamindar landlord. So he falls in love with Tilaga, and both of them, they're escaping from the small village they come from, and they ended up in Pondicherry. And from Pondicherry, they are going to Guadeloupe on the first ship going to Guadeloupe, which is called Aurelie. But why? Why telling that story? It's just because to tell how the caste system is so oppressive. The caste and class is so uh, embroiled in our society. There's no way for love and for equality in in the society. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to create these two characters, which come from two different class and two different castes, and how they're not able to live in a free society. So the only way where they could live freely is somewhere else. And somewhere else, they don't know where they're going to. But for them, it's already paradise. It's already heaven, because this is hell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where they were living, it's hell, because our society is based on caste, class, hierarchy, and everything which is implicated.
I think what's interesting for us to hear this is, of course, we are, by now we're used to hearing versions of the story in Anglophone writing, obviously most famously with Amitav Ghosh's, the Ibis trilogy. Obviously, it's important for a lot of us to know that these things, India is, it's a variegated landscape. South Asia is variegated, and similar stories are happening, which involve the French regime, the French colonial, hold over some parts of India, and how they negotiated to then do something similar, as we know happened with the Bhojpuri-speaking people who went to other islands in the Indian Ocean, in the Caribbean, and in Fiji, and these have been chronicled somewhat, by writers like Amitav Ghosh. So I think it's important for us to know and recognize that this was not just happening to one group of people from one part of India under the umbrella of one colonial, authority. But I think we already got a glimpse of this multiplicity, even through the episode we did on thinnai Creole, which involved Fiji, and which had our friend Ajay Chabra, who is a cultural entrepreneur and CEO of an enterprise based in London called Nutcut. And they're doing something called the Girmit Project, which again is retrieving certain histories parallel to the histories of your characters that you are charting in the thinnai. But of course, with the view to what happened in the South Pacific when they went to Fiji. And I think you had something to tell us about that. I think you wanted to mention something that Ajay said in that encounter.
Yeah, Ajay said something very interesting, because, when we were talking during the discussion, he said, these people, they were leaving India because there was a famine. And when they reach either Mauritius, Reunion, or even Fiji, they land in a land of abundance of fruit and food. So it's kind of strange, because you sign a contract to go and work as indentured labor, and you come to a paradise and you make a new life out of this place. So this is exactly what I'm trying to tell through these two characters, because however it's their own country, but they've been living in a very oppressive system. So they could go anywhere else other than India. It could have been just paradise.
I think this is obviously this is also a naive perspective, and Ajay was not unaware of the fact that going to Fiji was not, it was not paradise completely. I mean, there were other problems, but this is the story that he himself, what he said about this contrast between the famine of central India, from where his own ancestors left, and their journey through central India to Calcutta, and then out on a ship, not the Leonidas, which was the first ship to go to Fiji, but some other ship, arriving in the South Pacific. And he had a very poignant way of talking about that contrast. And I think this is very important for us. What we do in the thinnai Creole, one of our mandates is to really pick up those sorts of threads, which we already see apparent in Ari's writing, the desire to not just see the Indic space as a heartland, a composite whole, and then vectors escape from it, but then off they go, and there's a fragmentation. For us, what we do is we we go back to that fragmentation, we take the fragments, and as we say in the title to our talk here, we want to create what we call an archipelago of fragments. What do we mean by that? It's really taking these fragmented, these dispersed stories, literally, of people coming and going. And we don't want to reduce those fragments to some sort of we don't want to reconstruct a whole out of them. So this is an epistemological and also philosophical maneuver. We want to keep them fragmentary, and we want to create instead another structure, another epistemology, which we call the archipelagic one. And this enables us, therefore, to recognize similarities in stories such as Ajay Chabra's of his ancestors in Fiji, fictional characters such as Ari's duo that we just started the talk with. But we want to somehow loop it back to the perceived integral territorial heartland of South Asia, the peninsular heartland, and fragment that too. So the archipelagic impulse is actually returning to a place like Pondicherry and splintering its perceived integrity. And obviously we use these words with intentionally, because we know how they are used to enhance certain majoritarian conceptions of what South Asia must be. And the other thing that we do is connects to the idea of this abundance, the paradise that is there in the myth, a certain myth of arrival. We're interested in arrival, what happens to people such as Tilakan and Pandya when they arrive, and what they make of their lives there, and how we could connect up back with stories and projects and histories that are marginalized within peninsular India. And we've even, of course, extended in the last season our work to artists and writers who are Pakistani, to see if we cannot also kind of, extend this archipelagizing impulse to their work. And we had Naiza Khan and Uzma Aslam Khan, and both of them, I think, we had wonderful conversations with them, and I think it bore out our feeling that this is a project that can go beyond India to South Asia, and hence our pleasure in bringing it to this forum. But this is an archipelagic gesture, which is one that connects what we call creolized life worlds in insular and peninsular contexts. But it's also a bit more. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Ari now to tell us how it's not just a geographic archipelago of fragments that we are interested in reconstructing and reassembling on the thinnai Creole. Ari, over to you about what exactly perhaps is our...
You're absolutely right, because we really trying to, in a very modest way, I'm not kind of very over ambitious, but in our modest way, we're trying to change people ways of thinking, people way of behaving, the social changes, because more and more in all over the world, not only in South Asia, there is a kind of inwards looking attitude, as we say in French, un repli identitaire, the identity, just keeping our own, we don't open ourselves to, and more, and we can see that in India mainly. There's a kind of hegemonic discourse which is going on, and we need to change this in whichever way. So that's why Thinnai Creole, Thinnai was a book, and being creolized, it became the Thinnai Creole of resistance. We are resisting against this hegemonical attitude of saying, okay, this is the way you should do, this is the way you should eat, this is the way you should wear clothes. So, and more and all over, it's going to be, since we are talking about South Asia, it's very important to say that that's what we are doing on the Thinnai Creole. And slowly, it's very fascinating, but we didn't anticipate it at all, Ananya and I, because we want to create this cultural platform in order to invite people to come and sit on a thinnai and discuss the world. As says Edouard Glissant, c'est voir le monde, discourir le monde, parler du monde. But what we understand very surprisingly, we are creating a community. We are creating a community of people who think like us, who wants to bring this change, And so every week and every day, people just come and sit on a thinnai. And this is what we are doing. And this is a major achievement. And I'm saying very proudly. I mean, we can say very proudly, but I can say very proudly because it's both of us, we didn't see that coming. We opened the thinnai, but we didn't see coming the community. So
Well,
this,
I certainly didn't, because Ari's the writer and he has a certain imagination. Rashmi, we academics sometimes, I'm sure we started out with imagination and we want to still have it, but we get so bogged down. Footnotes, references, bibliographies, correct prose. We lose sight of the ability to actually make that change happen, which we also desire, most of us at least. And so when Ari told me, when he approached me in April, when the pandemic first lockdown had started and we found ourselves quite restrained in what we could do, and he said, I would like to create a virtual platform based on the idea of the thinnai, which of course I knew very well because by now I was kind of analyzing Ari's books as a literary critic and getting to know him in that way, but he wanted to do something more. And I was a bit skeptical, to be honest. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's. And he was like, no, we must give people ownership of this platform. He had the whole vision. So I think you had more of a vision than me. I'm like, okay, let's see where we go. Let's use Facebook. We're both familiar with it. It's what everybody's using now. But I was certainly taken aback, and I was also very I see that Ari's vision has been vindicated because it is possible to do something like this, but only if we really, what I want to say is that, of course, as an academic, I had this theoretical idea of an archipelago of fragments. It kind of, the phrase popped out of my mouth while he and I were writing about trying to put together what are we, what is our sort of manifesto. Ari really liked it. Now I see what we do on the thinnai, just interacting with each other, is also like an embodiment or an internalization of a behavior that approximates or is commensurate with that theory, you see. And I think we want to spend a little bit of time explaining that, because we've been going for nearly a year now, actually, and we are quite amazed as to the continuing popularity of this platform. It's not like people were curious about it and after 2 months, fair enough, everybody's doing a lot of experimentation and some things work and some things don't, but it sort of gathered a pace and triggered a series of very fascinating responses from people who we don't even know some of them, most of them actually.
Can I say something? Can I read something?
Yeah.
One of our thinnai guests at
Yes.
the community. This is very fascinating. I don't know who is that person. Of course, he's a Tamilian living in Reunion, as far I know, because he sent me a message. So this is what he wrote.
You're going to read the Tamil out, right?
Yeah.
And I'll read out the English, yeah.
தனித்துவமான அனன்யா, கருடா அரி, உயர்நிலை திண்ணையில் உங்களுடைய தொல்லையை எங்களால் தாழ முடியவில்லை. நன்சுவை திண்ணை படையலில் மயங்கினோம் நாங்கள் எல்லாம். பிரெஞ்சு, பெங்காலி, தமிழ், ஆங்கிலம், நொறுக்கு தீனி வேண்டும். வாழ்க உங்கள் படையல் எல்லாம், வளம் பெற வாழ்த்துக்கள்.
So Mohanasamy, right? Mohanasamy.
No, it's Mohana Sundaram.
Mohana Sundaram, sorry. Mohana Sundaram has written this praise poem for us. I discovered it in a comment on one of our Facebook events. And because I don't read Tamil, of course, thanks to Ari, we'll talk about this in a second, language, but I tried to do some Google translating with it and I realized it was something positive, but it was very archaic. I mean, it was very difficult because Google Translate was just not able to give me what it was. So I sent it over to Ari and I said, what is this? And he translated it. He sent me the French and I translated it in English. So basically what this lovely little poem is, the unique Ananya and the Garuda Ari sitting on their thinnai, we can't stand this torture anymore. We feast on the fare you offer us on your thinnai. We beg for more French, English, Bengali, and Tamil snacks. I wish you every success. Long may your creation live. So, I just found this too charming, really. But it's also very interesting from an analytical perspective. What is Mohana Sundaram telling us? He's actually picking up four important elements of the way we present ourselves on the thinnai. And I see them as language, body language, food, and feeling. So I think we're going to spend a little bit of time unpacking each of these so that, and through this unpacking, we want to communicate how exactly we are really trying to enact this manifesto of ours, the Archipelago of Fragments. How do we bring this into being through the way we are as hosts and collaborators on this public platform? So I'll start by addressing language, and then Ari, I think you can go to the next point, which was body language. But by language, really, as we are showing, even in the way we are presenting, we are willing to embrace the problem of not everybody understanding everything. Not everybody understood what Ari said in French, and that not everybody varies according to audience, right? In some audiences, there might be more people who understand French. But we can assume that not everybody has understood that French. I stepped in with an English translation, and we tried to make everybody comfortable, through this. Well, on the thinnai, we do something similar. I happen to understand French. My comprehension is not bad. It's obviously improved hanging out with Ari. My spoken French comes and goes, as Ari knows. So, I read it very well. So it's very uneven. It's not perfect. Sure, in an academic context, I would be embarrassed to display that lack of perfection. On the thinnai Creole, I don't care. I mean, I know there are a lot of people who won't understand English, so why shouldn't I try to reveal my lack of perfection in French? Ari, of course, his English is better than my French, so he's able to converse with me in either French or English, whatever he wishes at any moment. This, I think, is a very important democratizing and equalizing factor in our work, but it also splinters and fragments the hegemony of English, for sure. And this conception that India as a post-colony only has this monolingual root, in that sense of it is a post-colony of Britain. And we want to bring back the memory, that's what we call the memory of disappeared and disappearing pasts, that there were other European actors in the fray, not because we love them, but because we want to complicate the narrative of the British being the only colonial masters of India. Likewise, we also have our own other languages. I'm a speaker of Bengali, Bangla, Ari is a Tamil speaker. And so whenever we can, we naturally bring this in. As we all know, when we chat amongst ourselves as South Asians, we are multilingual. So we want to bring that multilingualism, that jugaad, that play and that spontaneity when we are on our thinnai. And I do believe that the way we do it has appealed to people, which is why Mogana Sundaram actually calls it these multilingual snacks, fittingly, his poem is in Tamil. And so this is the way I think we try to break the hegemony of English, but let us also not forget we do consciously want to break the hegemony of Hindi, not of Hindustani, not of, say, the Bhojpuri, Awadhi, all those so-called dialects. No, we want to break the hegemony of the master narrative and master languages. And we know the place that Hindi has had to assume in that process. So we kind of quite consciously avoid Hindi, not because we don't know it. It was my second language. I know it better than
I don't know Hindi. I don't speak one word of Hindi.
He doesn't. I do. So it's not that, it's just that we want to privilege our other languages because we have a message to give by doing that. But Ari, it's not just language, right? Mohana Sundaram says, we are sitting on a thinnai. And I want you to talk about this act of sitting on the thinnai and how you persuaded me to join you in that sitting.
Yeah, as I said, thinnai, since it's a resistance, also sitting is also an act of resistance. How you sit is also an act of resistance. You can sit many ways, like the way I'm sitting now. I'm casually sitting. I can also sit like this. I keep on changing my position. Then sometimes I put my leg on and, so this is my way of decolonizing gesture because we are taught to sit in certain way. And mainly you guys, academic, you're supposed to sit in a certain way, even wearing this stupid, ridiculous British wigs on your head. And not anymore, but those days, I'm sure, these white wigs and this and that. So, you are being taught of sitting in a certain way, or there's a kind of posture you need to have in order to people to take you serious. But like Ananya, but I'm not a serious guy. Ananya knows that I'm a clown. I keep on doing things. But Ananya is being an academic, she's supposed to be, or she's meant to be serious. So when she came on the first, I think first or second thinnai, I keep on jumping like a monkey from one place to another. And she said, man, what are you doing? He said, listen, just relax, let it go. Sit the way you want. You want to go out of the thinnai, go out of the thinnai. Go and take a glass of water and come back. So no, even the empty thinnai will still keep the essence of you even when you leave. So this is what I'm trying to say to the public, that this is my way of decolonizing gesture, and also say I can resist the way I want. You don't have to tell me how I should resist.
Yes,
So yeah, so I
that's
don't have to sit in a yogic pose or do all kind of gymkhana, whatever, in order to say, okay, this is the way I resist. I can resist the way I want. Even with a glass of wine, I resist with style.
yeah. So we definitely I quickly understood how this was actually, yeah, an embodied way of being. Of course, the fact is that when we found ourselves in this virtual world, also it was confusing to know how to grab the opportunities and how to reformulate them. So in a way, I was myself definitely experimenting with different ways of positioning myself in front of the screen for my students, for lectures. A lot of this was happening in the summer when we weren't teaching at that moment. So I can definitely say that my practice on the thinnai has made me more relaxed as a teacher once autumn began. But on the thinnai, it was certainly Ari that I was getting the cues from to be more relaxed. I'm not, as when people who have been on the thinnai Creole live events with us will know that this is not where I sit when I am on the thinnai. This is my study. It's only because we are a double academic household, and the outer room is now being occupied by my spouse who's teaching from there. So I can't go there and be my thinnai right now. So I'm in my study, and anyway, I'm going to be teaching later today. So in a way, it is my mode now. So if you want to see us in the real thinnai mode, where I'm mirroring Ari's relaxed pose, come and join our live events, and that's where we are very consciously trying to preserve a certain way of even, yes, arranging our bodies so that, as Ari said, this is the decolonizing gesture. But along with the decolonizing gesture, we also have what I call a de-Brahminizing gesture, which takes us to the third point I want to make, which is that of food. Now, we realized very early on that the thinnai Creole Facebook page is where we also put little posts, text and photo-based posts, which have nuggets of information about different aspects of what we call Creole Indias, this multiplicity of cultures that arose out of encounters between Indians, local Indians, and a range of outsiders, which then we analyze and define under the rubric of creolization, etc. And we often give these little nuggets out to people, like, about creolized furniture, creolized food, creolized modes of worship, but the food posts are always hot. People love them, they are shared, they're loved, liked thousands of times. So, we realize that people are very interested in food. So very early on, we started devising a series of events which were dedicated to food, and we call them thinnai kusini. Kusini being a Creole word in a sense. It's a Tamil word which means kitchen, but it comes from the Portuguese cozinha, and you can also find it in Konkani, same root, kusina. So this kusini is our way of talking about is the events where we foreground food, and so in these events we started, as Ari said, not just bringing a glass of wine along to the thinnai, but making little snacks, making food. And from the beginning, we were interested in not hiding what we are. Our snacks are non-vegetarian snacks. They are beef. Ari talks about pork. We had once a comment from a very dear friend of ours, one of our guests on the thinnai, who was a bit, she was like, Ananya, Ari shouldn't have been talking about pork because, they might, I'm like, actually, you know what? If we are going to be talking about beef, we should be talking about pork too. There should be no barriers to being, to kind of saying, let's be respectful in our disrespect. Let everybody be equally, let all taboos be equally flouted. If those who feel annoyed about mention of pork, well, there'll be others who feel annoyed with the mention of beef. Whatever it is, we eat all these things. Our family food ways, our histories deal with these foodstuffs. So we will put them out there. And, we weren't afraid to do that. And we know how important it is because we know people are afraid because their lives are on stake for what they eat these days. So we were very determined that in this normalizing gesture, this is what we eat. When we talk about Creole items, we will illustrate from what we do at home, what our parents did, what our aunts and uncles do, what our families and neighbors did. So this is the way we bring out the de-Brahmanizing gesture through food, which of course we know is important and political, and people enjoy it. Nobody has said we are aggrieved by this food item because they can see that this is the way we are appealing across the board to people. But I think the final element we want to talk about is what I have called feeling. But I don't know, Ari, how you want to interpret that. But over to you to discuss feeling.
Yeah, feelings. It's kind of, say again, in the Indic space, there is no other way of relating between a man and a woman from a certain point when you want to break these gender barriers. So there is always kind of very strange though. So there's two people who are sharing a common vision, a project like Ananya and I we are doing. There can be other than just friendship. There can be other than just brother and sister relation, which is, she's not coming tomorrow and tie a Rakhi on my hand, said, hey, you are from today, you are my brother. That is, I find it very stupid. So now, you kind of very patriarchal way of doing stuff. So I think we, both of us, we we know exactly where we are, our space, and this is the way we relate. And that's one of the reasons also people come, because most of the platform there's either a monologue. Here there are two people interacting in a very equal terms. So there's no hierarchy, there's no gender base, there's no class, there's no caste, there's nothing. It's just two people freely expressing their feeling. When I say, Ananya, I love you, it's I love you. And when I say I adore you, I adore you. So there is no kind of misinterpretation or whatever, kind of ambiguous. Yeah, there's no ambiguity here. So this is
Yeah,
one
yeah.
we are
I think
doing this.
this
When we
is
talk about feelings, I really feel, when I say that I feel something for Ananya, I will really say that publicly.
this is very important for us because we find this is also a way in which we want to create an alternative South Asia. As we have said, we are impatient with these models whereby people's behavior is pigeonholed, and also, as we said, this is the Rakhi times gesture. These are all patriarchal ways of controlling uh, womanhood, and also therefore how women behave with other people, including men. So we are very adamant that we won't sacrifice that freedom and that affection that we are quite happy to show. And also, in a way, this is the allegropolitical move, how it ricochets and allows other people to feel comfortable in this virtual community we are creating. Virtual it may be, but it seems to have some sort of an emotional, substantiveness. And here, I think I want to say that there are people. I will say publicly now. People have, Rashmi, you are aware of it. People have cast aspersions on this apparently unfettered, unhierarchized relationship we share. People have, senior academics, male academics, have written to me saying, "Why do you have accused me of being in a master-slave relationship with Ari? This is absurd. Why are people saying these things?" That's because in their frame, this is transgressing. What they see is transgressing some expectations they have, some norms they want to police. Well, we are not going to be policed by others. Rather, we are setting some new norms into place, which in fact are indeed norms because they're normal. Everybody wants to be free with everybody else. That's why we don't want the perpetuation of those hierarchies which made those fictional characters have to leave. Now, before we start wrapping up, therefore, I want to read out a comment that one of our other regulars on the
Oh, yeah.
Creole made to us when we spoke about such attacks on us, because this was the master slave one was not the first. There were other attacks have happened too. So we got this comment. This is also another person we don't know, neither of us know. He just this is Praveen Ashok.
Oh yeah, Praveen. Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah. So we know nothing about him apart from his name. You are definitely deconstructing certain norms, he said in a message to us on the Facebook page, through your individual collaborative efforts and also by the assimilation of inputs of thinnai participants. Both of you being together in your session is an exercise in creolization happening in real time right before us. As your collaboration tries to create a new norm, while doing this, it's meeting a pushback from the fanatics of the status quo. And you are putting a resistance akin to a revolution to establish this norm as a new normal, a creolized normal. A creolized form not agreeing to any accepted set of norms, but formed through a mix and confluence of cultures which can't and should not be bracketed, but be left fluid, to take with it any norm, any practice, any faith. In your journey, we stand by you and we would wish and request from you to continue with your earthy audacity and synchrony in bringing before us your interpretation of culture and its passage through time, space, and geographies. We, as your loyal audience and your ardent supporters, have learned a lot from you and are willing to learn more from your lived and academic experience. So, this sort of a comment is extremely moving. These are not academics writing. Actually, we don't even know what they do and who they are in real life. Does that matter? All we know is that these people turn up, they form our community, they give us a kind of validation, but that's not because we want to be validated. We would have been talking and saying our stuff to two people if they had to be. But it's because we feel that the way we have developed our modus operandi is actually touching a chord. There are people out there who are looking for concrete alternatives. And even if that means clicking onto the Facebook Live and entering that space for an hour every week, they're happy to do it. Ari, I think Francois Brigadier's comment would be quite important here to talk about that whole feeling of being in this virtual space.
Yeah, Françoise, I know. Françoise, I met her in Pondicherry 3 years back.
Yeah.
But since then, she has become a very good friend. And she's a very loyal and regular person who comes and sit on thinnai every time for our events, and also for thinnai does, which he loves. Yeah. Because thinnai, as you should know, Rashmi, it's a kind of place where you might have seen it, but the audience, it's a freestyle space. Yeah. We just talk, chit chat. So François says that in French. J'aime bien préparer quelque chose à boire et être prête pour venir m'asseoir sur votre thinnai. Je sais que je vais rencontrer mes amis. Bien sûr, je ne les vois pas, mais je les sens. Nous savons qu'on est dans le même espace amical. C'est pour ça que j'aime le thinnai créole.
So what François said is, I like to make myself something to drink and be ready to come and sit on your thinnai. I know I will meet my friends. Because of course people use the comment space to even greet each other, and people have become friends with each other who we know wouldn't have known each other anyway before all of them encountering each other in that space of the comments. So I know I will meet my friends. Of course I don't see them, but I can sense them. We know we are in the same friendly space. That is why I like the thinnai Creole. So I think what we are most pleased about is all these different kinds of empirical kind of evidence that we have successfully built something. Where it's going, we don't know, but we give people a way really to think about an alternative South Asia. And as I said, there is a movement, therefore, between a kind of academic theoretical enterprise of creating this archipelago of fragments, having the research to back up how we can connect, say, Guadeloupe, Fiji, Réunion with Pondicherry, Chandanagar, Goa, etc. That's going on in one way academically. But the most important thing for us, I think, is through thinnai Creole, we are immediately translating that into an outward-facing kind of, radiating these attitudes. Again, as we've tried to explain the way we are, consciously, unconsciously, a bit of both. I think I just want to end by saying both of us, we do, I think at the basis of it, we have been able to connect because we are both from a certain kind of, there's a mutual marginalization. It's very different. I come from a Bengali Muslim family of Calcutta. I wouldn't say that I'm marginalized in the same way as perhaps Ari would feel himself marginalized, but I do know that I have a sense of being marginalized, particularly every day in the present. Maybe I didn't have this consciousness when I was growing up, when I was a child in the Nehruvian past. I wouldn't deny that I had my privileges, but certainly there are certain ways that we know that subjectivity is being constrained in India, and I feel part of that, that process of being constrained. I think, Ari, maybe a few words about your background would be important as we start wrapping up so that people understand this is where we are coming from, you and I.
Yeah, that's very interesting what you say, because 3 years back, as I said, when I went to launch this book in Pondicherry, and this is my second book, so people knew more or less who I was because of my first book. So when I went to launch this book, this is more historical based book about Pondicherry history and pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial history. So there is certain elite in Pondicherry who has been writing story for us. So me coming from a pariah Catholic converted, so suddenly I'm writing my own story. So this story is not accepted by this elite. So when I went to meet one of the guy who belongs to that caste and class of people, he said, but this is not true what you said. But this is not true. So he's trying to pinpoint some facts in the book, because you won't believe me, I just launched the book 2 days after the man has already finished the book. So it shows how much they're insecure, or they are first of all curious and insecure that somebody else outside their community who is writing something new about Pondicherry history. So this man is challenging me. So I sat with him, and he was drinking his pastis, n'est-ce pas? It's 12 o'clock afternoon, this very French attitude of drinking pastis like in Marseille. So I said, okay, I'm not going to be left alone. So I went to the corner shop, buy myself a bottle of beer, and I sat with him. Okay, let's talk now. So I challenged him. So end of the day, it went on for 2-3 hours, and he said, it's quite interesting what you're writing, but nevertheless, I got my reservation. So see, this is what I'm trying to see. You still kept marginalized by these people who don't want you to tell your own story.
I mean, this mutual recognition, of marginalization, I think, has helped us in building or sharing a common vision, which we then, are in agreement about showcasing those very elements that marginalize us on the thinnai Creole, and that is the way in which. Therefore, it appeals not just to those who have also been marginalized, but those who become conscious that they're part of a hegemonizing, segment of, say, Indic society, kind of join the others in this common space of the thinnai. So it is a leveling gesture as well, for the better, I would imagine. And the common mood, I think I'm going to end with that, because I'm conscious that time is running out. We did have a couple more things to say, but Rashmi, I do want to leave some time for questions. So Ari, shall we sacrifice Karne Sikre?
No, if you don't mind, I'll just read that 5 minutes, because since we are resisting,
okay.
I also want to.
Let me just make a link to that then. So what I want to
vision of the society I want to leave. So this is what I wrote in my first.
Let me just make the link, and then we'll leave it. We'll pass it to you to make the passage, read the passage. So what we wanted to show is, through all this that we've been doing, the one element that I think is dominant and constant, alongside this idea that we are archipelagizing, there's Creole Indias, and we also have things that we did separately have found new life in the work we do together. So just as Ari's novels, both Thinnai, which he read from, and the Karne Sikre, which he's going to end with, have a kind of new and different life and invigorate the work we do on the Thinnai. My work on Allegro politics, which you alluded to, Rashmi, in the beginning, which really came out of my research on African heritage dance, is also permeating the way we are on the Thinnai and what we are interested in. And by Allegro politics, really, I mean the joy.
Is it sorry, I think I said Allegro poetics. I'm sorry about that.
Poetics and politics, Rashmi, we are the people of English literary criticism. We know how these things are linked, right? But basically, it's the idea of allegro is important. Whether we put it to poetics or politics is the next step. Allegro is from allegria, which is basically joy. I use it as a sense of thinking about embodied and collective joy. And that's the kind of the joy that comes from drumming, from the drums of the Parai drums. You know, we're going to have our next session on the thinnai Creole, the next curated session on the 29th, a week from today, is going to be about the Parai drums. So people do come and you'll know all about Allegro politics and what we're calling Allegro Parai there. So this sort of, you know, freewheeling improvisation releases, like jazz does historically and phenomenologically, a feeling of exhilaration and embodied joy in recognition of equality and parity amongst each other. And that is for us a very important alternative community building process, because this feeling of embodied joy can only come when all those hang-ups that we are, you know, against by mobilizing language, body language, food and feeling, as I pointed out, that's when we are freer to connect through Allegro politics with each other, or through Allegro, which is therefore the politics of it. Now, Ari had precisely this emotion expressed in his beautiful first book, Karne Se Krede Lakshmi, which is the craziest book that one can ever imagine a first writer writing. It's about elephants, and it's about the caste, a group of elephants and their society, which is basically mimicking the caste system. And it's amazing. It's humorous, it's sarcastic, but it's also very moving and touching and emotional. And there's a beautiful passage there, which is very Allegro political, but it's also about how it talks to community building and through throwing off these shackles, I think. So Ari, I think absolutely.
I'll just read it in English. So it's simple. So, you know, we don't have to.
English? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So make it.
You have the English, right? With
Yeah,
you?
yeah. We'll save some time.
Okay. Go to the English. Yeah.
So I started the session with by people leaving the country, but here is the group of elephants who have been from Kerala, who has been taken to Burma to work in the what do you call in the
plantation.
In the rubber plantation. So they're coming back. It's coming back home. So this is the passage. The following day, the daybreak, when the first ray of sunlight appeared, we stopped. We had already covered a good distance and we were far away from the camp. We no longer needed to fear any potential reprisals. It had already stopped raining. The radiant sun was rising in a clear blue sky, emitting 1,000 rays. A new life unfurled before us. A life without chains, without masters, without forced labor, a life of freedom without restraints. No one would ride on our backs anymore. No one would give us orders. Neither sticks nor hooks would touch our skin. From now on, our skin would only feel the caresses of the breeze and the forest wind. It was in front of the Irrawaddy Delta that we made this solemn decision that we would never be slaves again and that we would live in harmony without hierarchy or caste systems, and we would be all equal. It was also decided on this day that those who wanted to stay in Burma would do so, and those who wished to return to India would undertake the long journey towards our motherland.
So this beautiful passage about the elephants, I think we can see how their decision-making resonates with the kinds of things we are talking about. But also for me, one of the most touching parts of this passage is the caresses, the skin that feels the caresses of the breeze and the forest wind, because I think that's also what we understand by Allegro politics, a kind of openness to the touch, what Michael Ondaatje called the sweet touch of the world in Anand's Ghost, you know. And it's through these new ways of reconnecting to what's around you and to each other, which are not new ways, but they have been perhaps lost. Those are the gestures, you know, that we want to bring back as fragments, which then are reassembled to become the new archipelago. And indeed, I find in this passage, talking of archipelagos and reassembling of fragments, and perhaps unlikely, but really, I think, fitting resonance with Iqbal's Dayare Ishq Mein, you know, that song which Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan also had this beautiful rendering of Dayare Ishq mein apna maqam paida kar, Naya Zamana, Naya Subah aur Sham paida kar. So basically, it's the English translation, very bad English translation, would be in the empire of love. Build your heart, build your home, build time anew, a new dawn, a new eve. So let's end here. We hope that we've given some account of our attempts to do precisely this. And we are very thankful to Rashmi
Thank
and
you,
to
Rashmi.
the group here to let us talk to you a bit about what we're doing. Thanks.
Thank you. A virtual clap from everyone who's listening in and from everyone who will listen to this. This was just fantastic. And I think you've offered a new model of offering seminars. I think a lot of people wrote to me saying, is it two people presenting? And, because of the sort of traditional model of a scholar coming to a seminar and then delivering a piece of research. So I think that this has really been refreshing and interactive, and this is something I would like to continue with in the series. So thank you so much. I'd like to invite the people who are here to ask their questions or to make comments. I can see one comment already, but I can perhaps maybe start off with a question myself while people may be gathering their thoughts. And that is, of course, how central and powerful the idea of the veranda, Latinai, is. And I was thinking of all the cinema and the literary texts that I've read where that space, the threshold is another sort of way to think about it, that connects the inside and the outside. It's a space of arrivals and departures. It's the space, as you said, transgressive. Uh, it can be a decolonial space. And in one's own sort of growing up years, my partner tells stories of how his grandfather from a feudal family in a small village in Bihar would sit every evening on the veranda, and the lowest caste people who otherwise would not dare to come to this upper caste, not Brahmin, but upper caste. I think he was a police officer, would come to the veranda, and then they would all sit and share the hookah and the drinks and all the meat sort of snacks that were being offered. And I think, almost everyone who's grown up with some kind of a veranda in South Asia
Yeah.
would know that it is the space. It's a kind of liminal, space. And also in terms of gender, I was thinking of Ghore Baire, Satyajit Ray's novel, but also, the film based on Tagore's novel, where it becomes the space where Bimla, you know, sort of the outside room or the veranda, where she can come in contact with the world. So there's just such a rich concept. And of course, when the thinnai is virtual, it offers, I mean, do you think, so that was my question. I'm thinking of real verandas made of, concrete
Yeah.
and or whatever,
Yeah.
and the virtual veranda. What are the pros and cons? Is something lost in the virtual veranda? Is something more important gained in it? And is this something you will always continue doing even when the pandemic is over? I hope so, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Ari, why don't you take that, and then I'll say something about the first part of Rashmi's observations as well.
Yeah, thank you, Rashmi. First of all, yeah, I think there's more pros than cons, to be honest. Because, when the idea came, had I met Ananya before, people should know that we never met each other.
You've never met in
No, we
person.
never met.
Mhm.
So this is the magic of
Yeah.
the.
I mean, we were meant to meet. So
Yeah.
everything was set up for a meeting on the 22nd of April, 22nd of March, or 19th to 22nd of March. We were supposed to be in Strasbourg and Paris together. Ari had a literary reading. He invited me for it. And I had a meeting in Paris and I invited him for it. So it was all set up in a very academic way, in a sense. But that didn't happen. So, well, we know what happened after that. So in a way, the pandemic kind of induced the virtual thinnai, because as Ari is saying, I mean, you're going to say that you were saying that had we met, right?
Yeah, had we met, I don't think we'd have built this level of complicity between you and me, and the eagerness to understand, to appreciate each other, because we were in a virtual space. The physical space is almost non-existent because that's the only way we can connect. So I think we give 150% of ourselves in order to reach out virtually. So I think this is where the beauty of the Tina is. Maybe if I met in Paris, we sit in a cafe, have a couple of glass of cafe or wine or whatever. I would say, okay, this man is boring. She would have said, okay, this guy is boring, and then would have left. So, but now we are forced to, not forced to, but we are we are in this space. So we give 150%. Sometimes she can be impatient and I can be impatient, but nevertheless, we go. We know this is one space that we create for ourselves, that we give it to the people outside. So let's give 150%. So this is what keeps us going. And are we going to create a physical Tinai? I'm going to announce to Ananya, yes, very soon. She doesn't know it.
Let's get our vaccines first.
I know.
No, but I'm seriously thinking of having a physical, a real place in Pondicherry with a real Thinnai house. We're going to call it Thinnai Creole, where we're going to have a cultural space very soon.
Well, this is a total surprise to me.
Yeah, so, this is what we
Never
do.
heard this plan
This is what
before.
we do.
And why ever not? But you know what? Let's also not forget that this is also something you do. You have to mention this at other moments, Ari, that if it weren't for the virtual Thinnai, we wouldn't be having so many people being able, ironically, to join
Absolutely.
the virtual Thinnai. And even though, as Francois says very poetically and beautifully, we can't see each other, but we sense each other. So, I think as with so many different aspects of human life and connectivity during the pandemic, we've been forced to adapt, and we've gone to places we never dreamt we would in our minds. I mean, I remember even in when the situation started opening up in summer, thinking, I better try and meet Ari, because it's the first time that I've been collaborating with somebody so closely. I've never met him. And we just didn't and couldn't, because we just didn't want to. We were still being cautious on either side, and we didn't take that opportunity to do it yet. So it seems that actually you can. Why can't you? And so that yes, why can't you build a community out of nothingness? Another thing we should say is that we have no funding. We have absolutely no funding. We work without funding, and we work with goodwill, because people give us their efforts. We have a team working for us, and of course, we hope we are not exploiting them.
We are 6 people working on this project, and
Yeah,
they're paid.
4 or 5 people working for different aspects, and there are different things that we do for each other. But it's totally on barter system at this point. You know, Rashmi, how it is about funding applications. Who has the energy at this moment of the pandemic to make a funding application? We're exhausted. We're just doing it ad hoc as we're going along, and it's working perfectly well. If Ari has an idea to make a real Thinnai somewhere, of course, when our world becomes some version of another normal, when we are all able to meet and talk, we want to have that real life interaction with ourselves too. No doubt we will adapt, and we will see, how we manage. But certainly what we are doing on the virtual Thinnai is quite precious, is quite unprecedented. And maybe we wouldn't want to lose that. now that we realize it can be done. So let's see how we go, but we won't fold it up, I think.
Okay, wonderful. Please don't. There's
One
some
more thing,
lovely
Rashmi, sorry.
messages here for you.
Rashmi, I have just one more thing to say about
Yeah,
the first part of your question, if I
yeah,
may,
yes,
which is really about the literary and cinematic and cultural resonances of the veranda space. As you were talking, I was thinking it's very important for us to realize that it's always a space of in-betweenness, and therefore, in a narrative or any kind of depiction, it's usually not something that any one doesn't linger because it's in between. The scene, the action is taking place either inside or outside. There's either the desire to retreat indoors into the interior or go out into the wide world. And that's the whole Ghore Baire thing, right? I mean, it's
yeah.
the outside and the Ghor and the Baire. But Ari's book is kind of unusual because it seems quite static. It's totally taking place on the thinnai. We barely see the inside of it. And I think this is quite a risk that an author takes to create a narrative which doesn't go anywhere. Because now the thinnai dilates time and you don't go, you sit there and you kind of almost decolonize that and deconstruct that teleological effort that it must go, we must be on the, so instead you sit there on the thinnai, and that's when all these democratizing impulses can carry on indefinitely. For the narrator it's a fantasy, but us on the virtual thinnai, we can actually do that time and again. So I think this is a very interesting, again, theoretical, I think, uh, comment to make, an observation that came into my mind as you were talking,
Yes.
that in most depictions, it is a place of traversal
Just
through,
crossing through. Yeah,
but we are stopping
yeah.
and we are hanging out and we are continuing the hanging out. It is being made an end in itself.
Yes, yeah, that's wonderfully put. All power to you. To just hang there.
There's a nice
Um,
comment for Ari from somebody who met him in Pondicherry.
yeah, there are two comments for you. One is, should I just read them out?
Yeah.
This is Nilanjana, who
Yes.
says Professor Ananya Jahanara Kabir spoke about embodied joy through various forms like dance and food. I felt this unfettered joy at this forum as I do at the other Thinnai Creole Addas. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
So
you, Nilanjana.
it's like the Adda thing. You want to go again and again because you also don't
Yeah,
want
you
to
get
miss
hooked with it.
out on what's happening in the Adda.
Yeah.
It's this FOMO thing that that's also
I'm glad that people have a FOMO of the
yeah, yeah,
it's a real
exactly.
compliment.
And then she also says, "Thank you so much, Mr. Ari Gautier, for sharing excerpts uh, from the book." And then someone else says that is it Annie Phillip? This was quite refreshing. I briefly interacted with Ari when I was a journalist in Pondicherry.
Oh yeah, hey,
I'm
that's
planning to look at Indians who wore the French uniform for the world wars for a story. Does Thinnai have any plans to look at exchanges which happened due to the wars? There you go. You have another idea for Thinnai.
Well, Ari, I think you must take this because we actually have talked about this frequently on the Thinnai, not least of all when we had our most recent event with Ato Kwesen and Alama Banku, which we called, perhaps mystifyingly for many people, what's It's Cooking Pei. And it's cooking is a phrase very dear to Atto, who is, of course, somebody I know for a long time. And whenever he gets excited, it's cooking. So it was an homage to him. It's also a kind of little gesture towards Alain, who wanted to talk about food. But the payee part is, I think, Ari, if I'm not mistaken, it would answer Annie Phillips's comment about what happens, the exchanges, due to the wars. I'm going to leave it to you to explain, actually, Ari,
first
because
of all, I'm very very happy to meet again Annie Philippe here after 3-4 years, I think. I mean, she wrote an article about the Tinai or Kanisuka election, not quite sure, one of this one. I mean, I'm the product of the what Annie Philippe is talking, this military people because my father was a French soldier, as we always say. So I'm the product of that, and I was supposed to follow my father's footstep, being soldier myself, and thank God, I never went more than 3 years of military service. Yeah, but I think it's very among the Franco-Pondicherry community, it's a very strong um, feeling or relation towards the French military because it's like mostly like each and every family should give one kid to the military service. So it goes to that extent that like in my sister, she really want one of her sons to be part of the military because her husband is from military. So I think that that the tradition, that martial tradition, is still there out there. It's exactly like how they make the Punjabization of the army, the the military in India, and the Kurgi people become the martial class, and Pondicherry also we become some kind of Kshatriya, that we think that we are Kshatriyas also. When I left when I left the military service, my aunt was saying, "Okay, what type of kid are you? You become from a Kshatriya family. This since when we become Kshatriya? Can you tell me this?" So this
Oh,
is
very
very
powerful.
interesting. This shifting identities, which I'm very, very, very interested. How society or community changes identity
Mhm,
according to periods and mainly during the colonization.
mhm.
So I'm very my next novel, Pondicherry Saga Creole, talks about exactly this shifting identities. From Paria we became Catholic and then we suddenly became Kshatriya. Where that comes from?
In fact,
Fantastic.
so
Mhm.
yeah, though to go back to the precise question that do we have any plans to look at those exchanges which happened due to the wars? So in short, it's kind of there. It's there in as a very kind of permanent backdrop or element of that which makes us, not least of all because it's part of Ari's own like family story, as he says. But for example, this word pays that we introduced, it comes from a way in which the French military
By the way, Ananya, sorry. By the way, we're gonna have the other event also with Pankaj Rishi Kumar
yes,
about
that's right. Yeah,
two flags. So
yeah,
there we're gonna talk about this kind of thing. So we can talk about that.
exactly. I mean, so we've got, as I said, the word pays is a word that is derived from the history of how different groups in the French military, in the French army, addressed each other, Francophone Africans, and then Ari's father and his friends would use the same thing, etc. So we have these small gestures as well as events themselves, like when Pankaj Rishi Kumar has done this fine documentary film about these French military families, Franco-Pondicherry military families under two flags. So we're going to have an event later on this season talking to him about that film and screening the film. We've discussed Pondicherrian and relationship between Pondicherry and Vietnam, because of French Indochina, which again, so it's not maybe directly the war, but it's a French colonial kind of, network that sent people from Pondicherry here and there. So in other words, your comment, Annie, is kind of really sort of like makes us think of many moments where this history is invoked and is dealt with in different ways, microscopic as well as events dedicated totally to it. So it's not something that's going to go away very soon either, because of course, as we said, it's part of Ari's heritage and it's an important. I mean, the military, like Jesuits, or like they're movers, they're merchants. There are all these vectors of creolization and exchange, and this would be one of them in a way. So for sure, we are very it's kind of omnipresent in what we do. There was another comment from Shuchi. Should we address that?
Yeah, Shuchi has a question. Should I read it out?
Yeah.
For both speakers, does the idea of a space to hang out also posit then the integrity or whatever is going on inside and outside? In other words, it's different from mixing and hybridity in that it is a contingent exchange that can happen again and again without fear of being eroded, perhaps thinking about gradual change and seeping into each other. Or maybe that isn't even the goal, thinking about what repeated traversal of a space does. So if
Madam, you take it.
Right. Well, you can chip in if you feel
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
absolutely.
want to contribute as I start, responding to that. It's a very interesting question, and of course, it kind of takes us back to Rashmi's initial point, and then my address of it. Um, Yes, I think just speaking in a very literary critical way, I'm thinking of how the thinnai as a space is the leading trope of Ari's book. And then it's also the space which we consciously proclaim ourselves to be in when we do our events. There is no inside or outside in the space. We are it. Uh, I mean, the space is in our own real homes that we've demarcated as the thinnai Creole, which people see, literally is framed by the frame of the screen. Nobody can see what's beyond it. And there is certainly, at least I'm not going anywhere in lockdown in England. So, so the point is that there is no inside and outside. This is it. This is where everything's happening. So there is a kind of collapse of time and space and a focus of what interactions can take place within this, kind of marked off, area. And this is exactly what's happening in Ari's book as well. So I'm kind of really enjoying this new way I'm thinking about Ari's book, really because of this conversation we're having here today. Because it could be something that you feel impatient about, as I said, but also then it makes you think differently about how chronotopes function in writing, And so I'm not sure, going to the second, so rather than thinking about whether the thinnai is posing, does the idea of a space, like whether it's compromising the integrity of inside and outside, it doesn't even matter in a way, because what's important is what it's enabling inside of it or on it. There's no inside, it's kind of semi-exposed anyway if you think about what thinnai is. So what I like very much is Ari's insistence on the use of the preposition on. We are on the thinnai. This is the way we've started talking about it, and now I can almost believe that this is a real thinnai that we are sitting on, or it has this structure that we are on it. So when people come on it, and like it's because it's virtual, it's infinitely expandable. A real thinnai maybe could have 20 people, 30 people, 40. This is, anyone can. So it's a very,
That's exactly, I remember when I had this idea to open
yeah,
this virtual platform, I said, I want to open the thinnai to the world.
yeah,
And of course, the world can't fit in a thinnai when can hardly take more
yeah.
than 15 people. But this virtual thinnai can take the entire world.
Exactly. So that's that infinite capacity. So therefore, I think it really becomes moot point what is inside and what is outside, because it is the way we can really think about periphery and center. When the periphery explodes, there is no center anymore because it takes over, and that's again another way of thinking about an archipelago of fragments. Alternative structures to even think about how we behave with each other. What are we trying to do with each other? So I'm not sure that this is really, of course, it's ironic. We are all about Creole. So Creole is our way of thinking about encounter and transformation. But theoretically, I find it quite important to make a distinction between creolization and hybridity. So instead of going into that long spiel over here, I'll just say, yes, it is different from mixing and hybridity, but we can discuss that in another space and time. And finally, I'm going to say that it's not about gradual change and seeping into each other. I'm somehow not finding those elements completely consonant with what we want to do, because it's not about delicate and gradual. It's about being. It's about we are here, and it's about unexpected and unpredictable encounters. It's not about genteel seeping into each other. We just are the way we are, and we are like constellations that are, sparking up against each other. I just don't say we as in me and Ari. I mean all of us, all the people who interact on the thinnai through the thinnai Creole. So I think the mode of transformation and change I'm thinking about is a bit different from what the idea of a gradual, discrete seeping and change would indicate, though I'm not saying that in creolization, those gradual things don't happen, but we are thinking about the other way of relating to each other. Ari, any
No, no, I mean,
you agree at least? I'm just
yeah,
wondering, here because
yeah,
I'm
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
okay.
Okay, wonderful. There are some other questions, compliments for both of you. One, Jessica says, I like the position that we are the way we are. I feel in my own community's history, there were constant messages that you can't be both European and Indian. You can only be neither. Right.
Who says that?
Uh, this is Jessica writing that that is what she was told.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not, yeah. So you're neither because, you are neither. in-
Yeah, but identity. Then it's a very. I think it's something personal. The
Yeah.
the yeah. I think experiences are different. That you don't. There is no kind of recipes for being this and this and that. I don't think that's exactly what Ananya said. We are here. We are there. So
Mhm.
I think by saying that, it's a very strong statement. It's also shows to other people, just be yourself.
Yeah, I
Just
think
be
so.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is the
Don't, yeah, exactly. Don't bother what other people can say, this and that. Just be yourself. I'm just be myself, and Ananya be himself. And that's how we are. We're not deliberately building this community, but the community build it by itself.
Mhm. Yes.
by everybody being themselves, exactly. So there's a mutual recognition of each other's difference, accumulate. I would like to say that we're also this is a community that's an accumulation of differentnesses, if that can be said. So
Absolutely.
and that's again the parallel of archipelago fragments. There is a way to connect, even if we're all fragments and we're all different. Each fragment is different from the other, and there's no way of predicting sameness, but that's okay. There are structures available that can help us reach out and connect somehow. Jessica had another very interesting comment earlier on. It seems a bit unrelated to what she said, but I must read it out because we are very interested in what you're doing, Jessica. You say, since you mentioned Bengali treats, I study 18th and 19th century Chandanagar Creoles. Anyone else working on this? We are working on this. Please get in touch with us. We are dying
Welcome,
to know more.
welcome to our community.
Yeah, please drop me an email. You can find me at kcl.ac.uk, and we are dying to know more of what you do and how you're doing it. So, sorry to just divert from your other question, Jessica, but I was really keen to address that. And thanks for
Yes.
asking both the question and giving us your research, work.
Yeah, so there's much gratitude coming in, and there's so much more to talk about. I just realized I was writing down furiously about this whole idea of the archipelago of fragments as I was, but I think that'll just set off a whole set of other questions. And I realize that we are out of time. Um, and so perhaps for another time, um, we would love to have you back and continue this conversation, or I'll join you on your thinnai and
Or,
ask you.
Rashmi, just ask these people to come on the thinnai. They
We
are
have
more
our Thinnai Adda this Sunday, no?
this Sunday. We having ask them to come in 3 days, two
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
You're welcome to have
Please
it.
come there and it'll be amazing. I will post a link on the South Asia page, the Facebook page for those people who, don't have direct access to your page, or
Yes,
they can just look for Letinai Kirol
yes.
and yeah, and find the event. It's a lot of fun, and I encourage everyone to do that. So I will say until next time, and say goodbye and thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who joined us. And I hope that people will hear the recording, those who missed it. And we will all meet each other someplace, somewhere, and on Latin Creole as well. So thank you, Ari. Thank you, Ananya.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Thank you,
Thank
May.
you, Ananya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rashmi, again.
Okay. And
And
we'll share the recording with you as well.
that would be lovely. Thanks to all who came and the questions and the compliments and the comments. Thanks for the encouragement. And yeah, see you on the Thinnai.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.